I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth and the lies told. Today I'm joined by Mr. Matt Johnson. He is a hypnotherapist and NLP coach who's turned his recovery journey into powerful methods to help others transform their lives. After a devastating brain injury left him living in darkness, Matt discovered that hidden PTSD was sabotaging his healing. By rewiring his subconscious with hypnotherapy and NLP, he not only recovered his health, but he developed a method for helping others release deeply rooted emotional baggage and break free from subconscious blocks. So let's give a huge welcome to Matt. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We were talking and see, it turns out that we're kind of live
We're
close
neighbors.
by. Yeah, a little bit of neighbors.
Right across the state lines from each other. That's very cool.
So
Small world.
So we kind of were reminiscing on that a little bit. So he's probably the closest person I've had interview. Atlanta was, but his town is actually, I think, what forever top the closest guest I've had from home. But thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to hear hear your story. I read it and I thought it was just really impactful. I love hearing mental health stories and I
Thank you.
love
Thank
having
you.
people come on here and showcasing their growth and their
Yeah.
everlasting journey on here. So, um, feel free to introduce yourself and just kind of share with my audience a little bit about what you do for a living.
Oh, sure thing. I'm Matt Johnson, and thank you for having me on the podcast, by the way. I am a hypnotherapist, and I also do hypnosis's cousin, which is called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Basically, what both of those do, it's kind of like working with the operating system of the brain. If I asked you to imagine biting into a big juicy lemon for a second, if you would, and just imagine crushing that between your teeth, feel that juice squirt in your mouth. Now, did you start to salivate just a little?
Kind of did.
Yeah. Where's the lemon? Only in your imagination, right? You just created a physiological response with nothing but a thought, right?
Mhm.
That the reason you can do that is because you communicated that thought to your subconscious mind with the visualizing, and your subconscious controls everything in your body that you don't have to think about: your breathing, heartbeat, body temperature, how much insulin you crave after a meal, and also your salivary glands, that pit in your stomach when you get stressed, things like that. We've all had the experience of we get stressed out and all of a sudden your stomach tightens up, or
Oh yeah.
get that lump in your throat or whatnot. It's because your subconscious mind responds to your thoughts and it controls everything in your body. By your 30th birthday, up to 95% of all your day-to-day behaviors are driven by your subconscious mind. And if that sounds like a lot, it is. But think about this for a second. Remember back to the very first time you ever drove a car, right? And you were hyper focused on not hitting anything, right? Your hands were 10 and 2, and it had your full attention. Fast forward a few years, and you got coffee in one hand, cell phone in the other, I'm kidding. Please don't do that. But, how did it go from being something that was all consuming to something that was just on automatic pilot? It's because your subconscious learned how to do that. And, just through repetition. Very cool process for driving, but uh, problems can happen when we hand it things like, teach it how to do, negative emotions, limiting beliefs, bad patterns, habits and things like that. And, when the subconscious learns to do those, that's when you've got a problem. And that's where someone like me can step in and help you reprogram those things.
So is this something that you always were driven to do, or what kind of sparked your interest in wanting to
Ooh,
focus on hypnosis
um,
and NLP?
I got my very first introduction to NLP at a Tony Robbins seminar. If you're familiar with Tony, he had a woman that had 152 different personalities once, and he was actually able to integrate her right there in the middle of the seminar. And I remember him talking about it. I was like, wow, that would be, really cool to be able to do. It was fascinating. But I left the seminar and never really did much with it until years later, and this is going to be kind of a long story. I got a severe brain injury. I was hiking at a place called Point Loma Tide Pools here in San Diego, and I slipped and landed the back of my head on a slab of solid rock. I hit so hard, my brain rebounded, hit the top of my skull, and I twisted the part here above my eyes. It's brutal pain. If you've ever been zapped by electricity and felt that intense, like pins and needles type feeling, that's what was going on in my head. And for years after that, I was so sensitive to light and sound, I couldn't even be in a room with the lights on. It was just too painful. Couple years later, I had been through every medical study for neurologists. I tried every hairbrain treatment I could possibly find, and I'd made some progress, but I came to terrifying realization that medical science was not going to get me where I wanted to go. And so at that point, I started, asking, what else is out there? Despite being a lifelong skeptic, I started getting into energy medicine. Being in California, luckily I had a lot of things to choose from. But I, one of the first things I tried was called Reiki, and it's an energy healing modality. And I told you I had those pins and needles in my head. The best description I can give is she kind of took those pins and needles and like kind of made them fly in formation, if that makes sense. And I'm like, whoa, I have no idea what you're doing, but please don't stop. At the end of the treatment, I'm like, can you teach me how to do that? And so, I spent a few days with her, learned how to do Reiki and all that. And I got into a lot of other energy healing stuff, pranic healing, qigong, things like that, and I spent the next couple of years just really, geeking out on that stuff. And I've made a lot of progress, a huge amount of healing during that time, but I just could not get rid of that light and sound sensitivity. So at this point, I'm thinking, I'm like 4 years into this injury. I'm like, do I have permanent damage here? Am I going to be stuck like this? I was living in a dark room. I have hefty bags taped over the windows. It's not a way to live. And so I did some research. I found a special type of brain scan called a SPECT, done by Dr. Daniel Amen. Not sure if you've heard of him, but MRIs look at the tissue, which doesn't really tell you a lot with a brain injury unless you've got something really bad. And a SPECT scan actually maps the electrical activity in the brain. So it shows like, any areas that are inactive or, dead, it'll show them as just like, it looks like a hole in the brain scan. Long story short, my brain was okay, but areas that were supposed to be dark were lit up like fireworks. And I was diagnosed with PTSD. And it hit me totally out of left field. I'd known I'd had anxiety issues. I'd, tried several therapists and all that, and, did medications and, little to no progress from, trying all those routes. And so at that point, I knew that I had to turn pro. The the thing with a brain injury is you have to bring your brain waves down, give it a chance of brain to rest and repair itself. My PTSD was keeping my brain in fight or flight and, sabotaging the healing process. So I knew if I wanted to beat the brain injury, I had to heal the PTSD. And so luckily I was already familiar with hypnosis. I'd been to Tony's seminar, so I knew a little bit about NLP, and so I, figured, that would be the best place to start. So I dove in. I got quadruple certified in hypnotherapy and NLP, and I peppered every single coach that I had, with the exact same question: How do you heal PTSD? And they all tried to help me, but none of them really had the answer. And so I, kept looking. I spent the next 2.5 years just geeking out, learning from the giants in both of those, modalities, hypnosis and NLP. And I finally put together a protocol to heal myself. And I was able to heal from it. I calmed down my fight or flight. And I had, some other issues that would, PTSD, there are 15 different issues, everything from hypervigilance all the way to flashbacks, that you can have. And I was able to heal those in myself. And I found my calling. I fell in love with this stuff. And I've been helping people, with, mental, emotional baggage, things like that, ever since. It's weird to say, but, and I definitely don't want another one. But the brain injury actually wound up being a huge gift, because if I hadn't gotten it, then I probably never would have figured out I had PTSD. My thought process was, it's something soldiers get, right? But and I never would have found, what I was put on earth to do. So sorry for the long-winded story, but that's how I got into it. That was about a 6.5 year process that I just described there.
Well, I think it's really motivational for you to go through a really traumatic experience to have turn that traumatic experience into a lifelong career. It's amazing. When you had the injury, did the doctors expect you to make a full recovery, or what was kind of your diagnosis at the time?
I From everything I found, like I said, I have four different neurologists. And if anybody listening to this is facing a health issue, I'll tell you just a quick story. I went to the first neuro, and he told me, well, there's nothing I can do for you, and then tried to schedule me for a return. I'm like, I didn't say this, but I'm like, why am I going to come back if there's nothing you could do for me? It didn't make sense to me. And so I went on to neuro number two, and he gave me a pill that made me worse. So I called him that night, and he gave me another one right away that took away the sting a little bit. I'm like, okay, this helps. Can you help me sleep? Because I was having these sleep issues where, like, the pain in my head made it hard to sleep, which made the lack of sleep made my pain worse. And I was just going down these brutal downward cycles. And he told me, no, there's nothing I can do for you. So on to neuro number three, asked her for something to sleep. Oh yeah, let me give you amitriptyline right away. And it helped. I was getting a nice, 7 hours of sleep a night. And I'm beyond grateful to my doctors. I would not be where I am without them. The only reason I tell that story is how many people would have stopped with that first one. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
when you're facing something like that, something, really severe, health issue or injury or something like that, you've got to do two things. Number one, you've got to decide. And the word decision comes from the Latin root de, which means from, and caedere, which means to cut. When you make a true decision, you cut off any other possibility. I sitting there in that dark room, on like day two, I decided I was getting out of there. And I had no idea how or what that path would look like, but I just knew I was gonna, keep going until I figured it out. And, I kept flashing on this image of, dancing on my kids' weddings, just to keep my brain focused on where it needed to go. And the second thing I had to do was take charge of my own recovery. Like I said, that first neuro, had I listened to him, I would not be able to be here with you today. It's a thing in our culture that, if somebody has a lab coat and a piece of paper on the wall, that they know what they're doing. And that's true, but that doesn't mean they know everything. And I got to a point where, I had read, I have no idea how many medical studies on how to, pretty much everyone out there at the time, on how to heal a brain injury. And I geeked out on it for a couple of years. And I got to a point where I realized, on the tiny, sliver of a topic of healing a brain injury, I knew more than my neuros did in that one little area. You know what I mean? And that terrified me. That's when I realized, uh-oh, these guys aren't going to be able to get me there. So, and the question went from, okay, they can't help me, who can? And that's the approach you got to have. I call it getting your PhD, your pig-headed determination. It's like, no, this is how it's going to be. I'm gonna, I'm not going to stop until I get there. And facing a chronic health issue or severe health issue, severe injury, anything like that, you've got to decide. You've got to take charge of your journey and just draw that line in the sand and say, I'm gonna find a way, or I'm gonna make the way.
Can you share how does the subconscious mind influence our emotional responses, and how can we reprogram it for more peace and balance?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with people who, their subconscious minds are, a little overactive, with, somebody cuts you off in traffic and, the rage spikes, or, you get a panic attack or whatever. Again, your subconscious controls almost everything in your body. And so what happens is when you have like, these severe emotional events, it can get, it basically, it gets into a mode where it thinks it has to protect you. And, something bad happens, I'm going to prevent that from ever happening again. I'm going to be, super vigilant about it. I'm going to keep you safe. It will shut you down in ways that you don't even realize. Just to give you an idea, it's an unrelated example, but there was a really fascinating study where they took two groups of people. One reported that they were very lucky, and the other group reported they were unlucky. This is a university study. And one by one, they took them to a restaurant, and they had put a $20 bill on the floor in front of them before they sat down. Without exception, all the lucky people found the $20 bill. And also, without exception, all the unlucky people missed it, just filtered it right out because of that one belief that an unlucky person does not find a $20 bill. You've probably had the experience of buying a new car or test driving one, and all of a sudden you start seeing that car popping up over and over again.
I haven't
Have
had that
you?
happen to me,
Okay,
so
okay.
I've not had
You
that.
will. You're still young. You will.
Yeah.
But Um, what happens is your five senses take in it's like 11 million bits of information a second, but your conscious mind can only happen like a couple, handle like a couple hundred. The color of the wall, next to you, the blood rushing through your big toe. You filter all that stuff right out and focus on what's important. That's called your reticular activation system. And just like those $20 bills, your subconscious will, it's called delete, distort, and generalize your world around you. It actually shapes what you see, what you'll even, consider as far as uh, in terms of that whatever it's been programmed with. So if you've got some trauma or some really emotional experiences, things like that, you tend to frame it through that lens, and so your subconscious is going to be trying to keep you safe, if that makes sense.
Would you be open to share a simple NLP or hypnosis technique that my audience could use today if they would like to maybe calm anxiety or regulate overwhelming
Oh
emotions?
yeah, sure, sure. My favorite one is an easy one. Just like we got you to do the lemon before. If you think about something that you're afraid of, or nothing too serious, maybe like a 4 or 5 out of 10, something that causes stress, maybe an overdue bill or a conversation you don't want to have, maybe a person who intimidates you a little bit. If you can think about that, and if you can do so safely, closing your eyes can help the effect. But in your mind, first notice where you feel that in your body and point to it, that fear. Now, in your mind's eye, if that feeling had a color, what color would it be? First impression.
My brain's thinking everything but this question.
Okay, okay.
That
I
goes with me. That okay. I want to participate, so like,
okay.
but
All
let's
right.
see. I'll just close
So
my eyes. I'll look like I'm in a
can you all right, can you think of something that maybe brings up that fear a little bit?
Mm,
Or what's another emotion that you can bring up? Something you can think of. This will work for just about any kind of emotion. Fear is an easy one for most people.
um, we'll see. I know I look like I'm in a coffin, just ignore it. Um, I can't think of any. My brain's just dead.
Okay.
I've had like, I could think of something, literally. I can think of it.
Have you ever had a time when you were afraid?
Yes.
Can you kind of bring that feeling back up?
Mm, I'll try.
Okay.
I'll keep trying.
Well, the cool part is this is being recorded, so we can go back and listen. So, all right. So notice where in your body you feel that. Point to it, right? And in your mind's eye, again, if that feeling had a color, what color would it be? First impression. Is there
Orange for some reason?
good, good, perfect. Uh, is there more than one color?
No.
Okay, good, perfect. All right. Now that orange feeling, if it had a shape, what shape would it be? Very first thing that pops in your head is usually the right answer.
A square?
Perfect. All right. That orange square, if it were moving, what direction would it be turning in? If it's hard to tell, try turning it one way, then the other, see what feels more natural.
Clockwise?
Oh, okay, perfect. Try turning it the other way and see what that does to the feeling. I see your expression change. Something happened
It's like
there.
it's done something, but I can't tell. It's like it
Right.
just went,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So find your favorite way to turn it, whatever feels best for you, maybe most peaceful. And if you'd like to, you can spin it up, make it go faster and faster in that direction while you drain all that color right out of it. Just
I
make
don't
it
know why.
total.
I just started doing this.
Okay. That's your subconscious mind. It's again, it controls everything in your body. So what we're doing, we're taking that fear, that physical sensation, we're giving it a visual component. Once we do that, it's just like the lemon. We're communicating that to your subconscious mind. Once we give it that visual component, we can now play with it. Right. So imagine, spin it up in that favorite direction, drain that color out, make it totally transparent in there, and then fill it back up with whatever color you like. Some people like gold or pink, green or blue,
I'll
whatever
put
feels most
green.
peaceful.
Green's
Good.
my
Perfect.
favorite
Awesome.
color. Okay, we'll do that.
So
Great.
you've got that green square now still spinning. Try adding sparkle to it. Watch it start to swirl throughout like a candy cane and one of those poles in front of a barber shop.
Oh, I'll add glitter for this, but I don't like glitter.
Okay. That is
Okay.
one of my very favorite. It's a very old NLP exercise called unspinning fear, but that's one of my very favorite ones. It's easy to do. You can do it in the moment. That was the subject of my very first Facebook Live. Take a wild guess why I picked that one for my first live. So I was terrified, but 2 minutes into it, I was totally fine. You know what I mean? I was actually having fun with it. But that works for stage fright. That works for being on a podcast or anything that brings up that feeling. So that is the gist of what I do. I help people take what's going on subconsciously and just kind of rewire it so we can make it into what they want, if that makes sense.
Do you have like a simple hypnosis technique that you do?
It would take a little. It would take some doing to get you down into hypnosis. But I do. It would take too long for this podcast. It's,
Okay.
um, yeah, yeah. NLP and hypnosis, they're very similar. I do similar type stuff once I have you in hypnosis. We're dealing with, triggers, patterns, and, emotional events, things like that. And just we're reprogramming them into what you want to be.
I've tried hypnosis before.
Oh, cool.
But it was a huge fail because it was just
Okay.
for me on. We had this guy, and it wasn't for a therapy sake. It was more for entertainment.
Yes.
Hypnosis.
Yes.
Um, we had a guy come, and he tried to get the audience to kind of fall into a hypnosis state if we were wanting to, and I was open to it. And I closed my eyes. Well, of course, noises were happening all around. My head
Yeah.
was going 90
Yeah.
miles a minute. Then I started coughing. I said, okay, I'm done trying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I attempted to do it, but it was just an immediate fail. I've not used hypnosis for therapy purposes.
Hmm.
Um, I'd be open to doing it for therapy sessions, but I don't really know what kind of trauma in my life I would need hypnosis for. Because
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had guests come on here that have specialized in they're a hypnotherapist. They specialize in hypnotherapy, and they use hypnosis for therapeutic reasonings for people that have addictions to drugs, alcohol, or
Yeah.
something mentally. And I've just been having kind of a weird hard time trying to pinpoint if if hypnosis would actually help with my trauma that I have. I,
Okay.
I had never really fallen into the drugs or alcohol realm or
Hmm.
anything like that, and I feel like that's what most people use to hypnosis for because it kind of changes their mindset of not drinking
It's
and
good at, yeah, it's good at getting rid of patterns and things like that. It's a lot of times with drugs and alcohol, people are numbing something that's, something they don't want to feel. And I've seen this before, like once you get rid of that numbing agent, whatever that is for you, that could be video games, that could be a lot of things, but stuff will start to surface. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And that, that when that happens, that's something that that's my specialty. I've gotten really good at that. And I don't say that to have ego. I just found the best people in the world and, learn from them. But you talked about stage hypnosis. That's what everybody, well, most people, that's where they get their intro to hypnosis. If you
right,
watch the stage hypnotist, he brings people up and he'll look put them under and he's looking for suggestibility, depth of trance, which you didn't have because you got sidetracked, which is fine. That
yeah,
happens. I still happens to me to this day. You know what I mean? It's this stuff happens, but
hmm,
it's kind of like playing a sport or an instrument. It's just the more you do it, the better you get. But
right,
he'll take them up and put them under on the stage and
hmm,
if you watch, he's being very playful with the people who are up there and he's watching
hmm.
to see who plays back. He wants to know who's going to entertain that audience. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, hmm,
And that's what he's doing up there. People think, they go under hypnosis. I'm going to make him pluck like a chicken or something like that.
yeah,
Doesn't work that way. You never lose the ability to accept or reject any suggestion given. That ability is there with you no matter how deep you go. You always have your wits about you. You're always very much in line with your values. I would argue more so because we've gotten your crap out of the way. Now, if you're questioning whether or not you can be hypnotized, let me ask you this: have you ever been emotionally impacted by a movie? Um, you get like riled up or emotional or something like that. You feel anything?
let me see. Not much, but I
Mhm.
have. I've been both sad and mad at movies before.
Yeah.
I've also been confused. So
Yeah.
after the movie's done, so I've had some emotions come from watching movies. Yes.
Yeah. So you have with a movie, what you have is a narrowing focus, and basically it's called an alpha brainwave state. They put you into with the music and all that stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
it's a continually narrowing focus. Those are the definition of a hypnotic trance. Movies do it, TV does it. There's actually a thing called road hypnosis. If you've ever done like a long trip or something, like been on the road for a long time and you kind of zone out, that's
Uh-huh.
hypnosis. It is the exact same mechanism in your brain. It's just what I do goes a little deeper. But as far as getting a change with hypnosis, a lot of people worry about, can I, am I hypnotizable or whatever. It has to do with whether or not you can relax and eliminate the distractions like we were talking about. But there's also if you think back to your favorite game of pretend as a kid, and for me, I was I'll give away my age here. It was like GI Joe times, back in the '80s, and me and my buddy would go hunt each other with using sticks for guns out in the woods and stuff like that.
Hmm.
At some point, that in my imagination, that gun became real to a degree. You know what I mean? If there was part of me just hanging back saying, nah, it's just a stick, I lost some of that impact, right? To the degree you can do that, whether that's, stick guns or playing with Barbies or whatever that is, to the degree you can just get in, just dive in and play like a kid again, that's the degree you'll see the change in hypnosis. That's the trick.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone could be hypnotized. I mean, it's the same thing as um learning how to ride a bike. Everyone can learn how to ride a bike. It's essentially like learning a new hobby. Now,
Yeah.
not everyone can do it, which is fine. I've tried. I mean, I tried it and it failed for me drastically. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't work for other people.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's fun to do. It's fun to watch people get hypnotized, but for the therapy side as well, I've seen it. I've heard people say that they specialize in it and it's changed lives. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm for the
Absolutely.
hip
Yeah.
I'm for the hypnosis that helps people with the alcohol and drug addictions, and as well as just like any kind of addiction, and as well as help kind of heal from past trauma. I think
Yeah.
that it does it. That's the kind of hypnosis I really like. While the stage entertainment hypnosis is fun to watch, there is an important side to it. So I think everyone's open to it. I would give it a try, whether it's for therapy reasons or if it's for entertainment reasons. I think it'd be something fun to at least try once in your life. I think it's fun.
Life changing when you really start to get into it. It's I've worked with soldiers, child abuse victims, you name it. I've Until I got into this line of work, I never realized how nasty people could be to each other. It's pretty bad, but it is a very rare occasion that we can't go in and wipe out the emotional impact and get them emotionally and mentally healthy again. It's like I said, that 95% behind the wheel is once we go in and, start to reprogram that, a small change made down deep can make a huge ripple effect on the surface. To the point it seems like a miracle. In reality, there's no miracles. It's just we're dealing with that stuff where it lives, right? My dad, I saw him smoke for 30 years and he'd, pack a day and he tried pills, patches, gums, you name it, and failed every single time. And until he got hypnotized. And he told me after that he never even craved cigarettes again. That was my intro to hypnosis. I was like, 8 years old. But that really, to me, it's fascinating. You know what I mean? You
Hmm.
look at, what a human being can do, the potential of any of us is just enormous. And very few people tap into their full potential. If you don't believe that, look at somebody like Stephen Hawking. You know what I mean? He was wheelchair bound, couldn't even speak. And he changed, our view of the universe, you know what I mean, and how it works. But so few of us ever tap into that, who we really could be if we really maximized our ability. And that's, I love that subject. I'm trying to do it myself every day. It's still a journey, but I love talking about this stuff, obviously, because I keep rambling.
Have there been any clients that you've had the honor and privilege of helping that have really stuck out and really have stood out to you that really worth make it worth
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely. Like I said, for me, I love everybody. I help everybody who, asks for it. I really, it hits me when I get the child abuse victims because for me, my PTSD, I got it very early in life. And once I got diagnosed, I looked back and I saw how much I'd shut myself down and just really didn't live life, the way I could have. And, the defense mechanisms and all that stuff. And so I really, number one, I got good at it because I was my first client. But number two, it's when I can change that for somebody else, you know what I mean? It's the most complex part of the work, but it's also the most rewarding. You know what I mean? It's really incredible. Just you can physically see it. I'll exaggerate it here, and obviously, people can't see it listening to a podcast, but their head will kind of shake a little bit, and that is the neurology physically rewiring. We're getting rid of those old patterns physically, and neurons that fire together, wire together. We undo that process that for all the garbage that they've done, and it's just, I don't know. Again, I'm a geek, but I love this stuff. My my very first client, I went through NLP school without even I had no intention at the time of helping other people. It was just something I was just trying to clear my own stuff. And about a week after, a friend of mine posted on Facebook that her daughter had been diagnosed with dyslexia, and I'm like, wait a minute. I remember like a 10-second blurb in NLP school about how to correct it, and so I'm like, I think I can help her. And so I drove from San Diego up to Carlsbad. I'm like sweating bullets the entire time, thinking, I'm going to look like an idiot, but I got in there and she went with no kidding. In about 20 minutes, she went from struggling with 3 and 4 letter words to spelling like 11, 12 letter words, 3 syllables, forwards and backwards, no problem. Just a simple, eye movement trick that we used. And that I was a blubbering idiot for the next 3 hours. And then, the next day, mom reached out. She's like, "Hey, I'm dealing with some stuff here, and can you help me?" And so I went up. Again, we did a marathon session, just working with her stuff, and it was like, at the end of that, I was like, "Yeah, this is what I was born to do. This is cool."
That's awesome, to be able to help someone that was dyslexic and then they went on to spell 11, 12 letter words. That's just
She's gone on to
so
get all
impactful.
kinds of reading awards and all kinds of stuff. She's crushing it. I love, you think about the impact that has on her compounded over decades. You know what I mean? It's like, what's that going to do to her life? You know what I mean? It's just, it's fascinating to me.
That's awesome, and that just shows you that it works.
Yeah.
That it can work,
Yeah.
and that people don't just use it for entertainment. I mean,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
a pure example of kind of a medical emergency and that it helped. Um, what advice do you have? Because, some people could listen to this and no matter how much someone can speak on it, they can hear me say it or anything that they might not believe it. And, there might be some people out here that still maybe want to try it. What
Yeah.
advice do you have for people that want to try NLP and hypnosis, or therapeutic hypnosis for the first time?
If you're nervous, I run into people all the time who are nervous about hypnosis, and I explain to them, what we talked about you're always in control and all that. It's got a bad rap for I'm kind of on a crusade to I'm not anti-stage hypnotist. I like watching the dudes at the fair, just like everybody else, but it's kind of goes back to what I said before about like taking control and deciding if you aren't getting the results that you like in your life, you know what I mean? If you got something like my case, I had, 3 talk therapists, I, tried the meds and all that. It didn't work for me. And so I knew I needed something else. If what you're doing isn't working for you, then find something that does. And, for me, that was NLP and hypnosis. If you're worried about it, you can, I give out free NLP exercises on my Facebook group and all that stuff. You can try it out for free there. No, I don't spam or anything like that, but, thank you for asking that, because I'm really trying to get the word out. These things are just, the power of them is incredible. And it's because the power of the subconscious mind is incredible. And these tools actually work with it directly, as opposed to, for me, talk therapy, sitting on the couch and all that. Basically, what I did was drive the grooves deeper in my brain and got it to focus more on, the stuff that I didn't want to. But there was a book, Biology of Belief, with Bruce Lipton, where he talked about uh, your subconscious can actually reprogram your DNA, literally switching genes on or off. Dr. Bernie Siegel did some really fascinating research back in the day with multiple personality disorder, where patients' eye color would change, like scars and things would disappear and reappear, depending on what personality was coming through. That's how powerful your subconscious mind is, and that power can either work for you or against you. So if you want the former, then those are the tools to go in and really change that programming.
If people have questions and they would like to maybe reach out to you and learn more about NLP or this hypnosis, or they just would like maybe if they would want to maybe if they live close to you in San Diego and they want to maybe do a session with you, where can they best find you at? And feel free to plug everything that you have, your social media, website, whatever
Oh,
you
thank
have.
you.
Feel
Thank
free to
you.
promote all that.
I'm at Matt Johnson, MattJohnson, NLP for Neuro-Linguistic Programming.com. That's MattJohnsonNLP.com. And I have a Facebook group and a YouTube channel called Rewire and Rise. It's basically we're going through. I don't do a lot of like, the heavy duty, emotional baggage type stuff is something I really need to do one-on-one with you, because
Mm.
we're going into those memories and things like that. What I do is I put out free exercise, the unspinning fears thing that we did is one of them. I do for, limiting beliefs. We rewire those, imposter syndrome, procrastination, all kinds of cool stuff. I give those out for free and just kind of show people the power of this stuff. I also have a subscription that I'm just starting. I'm very excited about this one. It's called Limitless by Design. And I told you before about all the ways that I shut myself down, when I, had my trauma and all that. I Limitless by Design is it's a complete system to basically uh, take the limits off of your life, your health, wealth, relationships. We do a different theme every month. September, we just finished up Wired for Wealth. October is all about, finding your tribe, that magnetic charisma and, going out and, making friends. And, that's really where the richness of life comes. If you want to have a rich life, if you want, an emotionally fulfilling life, other people have to be involved. And there's an epidemic of this ever since COVID. People, kind of retreated into their house and now they don't want to come back out. So I'm trying to fight against that. But it's, again, it's, January is all about, making your New Year's resolutions real. February's relationships, all that. I'm trying to give a complete holistic, you know, subconscious reprogramming, car wash basically, and help people transfer or transform into who they want to be.
Well, I'll put all of his links in the description box. I'll put his website and his social media accounts down there if you would like to check him out and learn more about what he does and learn more about his practice. And as well as just to kind of keep up on what he does from day to day about any announcements that he might have coming up. I'll put all those for easy access for you guys down there. Feel free to follow me on social media as well. Instagram and TikTok at Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Noah's Podcast. And as always, listen to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm available on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's everywhere, so feel free to subscribe to it so that you'll get notified of when new episodes drop. Um, Huge thank you to Matt for joining me today, sharing this story. Did you have any closing words for my audience and listeners today?
Thank you for having me. You only get so many trips around the sun. So, the question, how do you want your trips to be? Figure out what you want that to look like, and then just reverse engineer from there.
Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing this. And to my listeners, thank y'all so much for tuning in today. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Be safe out there, make good decisions, and I'll see you on the next episode of Lethal Venom.